This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. It's Thursday, November 11th, 2021. Let's talk about the news. From the Washington Post, people, quote, unvaccinated by choice, end quote, in Singapore no longer can receive free COVID treatment. The Singaporean government has announced it will no longer cover medical costs incurred by people who require care for COVID-related issues and who have chosen to not get the vaccine despite being eligible to receive it. About 85% of people who are eligible for COVID vaccinations in Singapore are now fully vaccinated, and about 18% of the eligible have received booster shots. The government's decision seems to be based on numbers, showing that the majority of people ending up in hospitals with extreme COVID symptoms are the unvaccinated, and they're putting substantial strain on the medical system. So the logic seems to be, why should the government pay for the consequences of these people's choices when alternatives are readily and freely available? From Bloomberg, India wants $1 trillion before it raises targets to cut emissions. India's government has said it will commit to net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2070, but only if the wealthy world gives it $1 trillion in climate financing to make the necessary investments, upgrades, and repairs. India is the world's 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and the United States, but it's also the poorest of those 3, and this demand takes that economic imbalance into account, though the number and timeline they want the money by 2030 are ambitious by the current standards of climate investment, as the wealthy world previously committed to providing $100 billion in aggregate for all the world's poorer countries each year by 2020, and even that goal hasn't been reached. So 10 times that amount for just one country, even a sizable one, looks fairly extraordinary through the lens of today's climate-related diplomatic and economic circumstances. And from the Wall Street Journal, U.S. inflation hits 30-year high in October as consumer prices jump 6.2%. The U.S. Labor Department has announced that the Consumer Price Index, which measures what people pay for a basket of representative goods and services, was up to 6.2% in October from a year previous, marking the most rapid increase in this metric ever and the 5th month in a row of inflation numbers above 5%. It's worth noting that this measure is considered to be flawed for some purposes, and the core price index, which is a similar measure that doesn't include things like food and energy, which can be volatile from month to month, but also based on weather conditions or disasters, only tallies 4.6% in October from the year before, which is still higher than September's 4%, and far higher than typical, but more in line with what the Federal Reserve has said should be expected of a temporary bump before things settle back down within a year or so. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com, and you can support this and other related projects like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.